I've got 3 o'clock, so we'll proceed with the Facilities Committee meeting, Wednesday, April 3rd. Public comment period, we don't have anyone want to make a public comment, so we'll proceed from that. At this time, I'd like to get a approval to go to an executive session.
So moved. Second.
Okay, let's go to. We'll move to the approval section. The next item is the minutes from March 22nd, 2019 Facilities Committee meeting.
I was here. They look good to me. I move to accept the minutes.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Okay.
Next item is award of engineering study to provide service to unsewered areas.
Mr. Chairman, this is, we did an RFP for this. We got our responses back. The responses were evaluated, and basically, Georgia Water and Environmental Services are recommended to take on this task for $17,636. And this, just as a refresher, we're going to be looking at extended services to 3 key areas that we mapped out and submitted with it, and that includes the areas along 341 we talked about before, Arco, the Ellis Point area, and the other just a little further up on the north or the east side of the 341. Staff recommends Georgia Water and Environmental Services be awarded the contract.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the Brunswick-Glynn County Joint Water and Sewer Commission enter into a contract with Georgia Water and Environmental Services in the amount of $17,636 for engineering services to perform a cost study to provide sewer service to the select unserved areas of Glynn County.
I have a question about this firm. Have we ever done work with them before, and is it a private and not a government entity?
It is a
Private
private
entity.
firm. They're currently doing the village project for Glynn County, so we've been working with them on that project, and it's been working well with us together. They have their home office is in Macon. They do have a local office here.
Okay.
And we'll have to make the final vote tomorrow in the commission meeting.
Do we want to?
I'll second.
Okay.
All in favor? Motion carries. Next is award of engineering study for Academy Creek Basin odor control.
Mr. Chairman, this, staff put out an RFP again for an engineer to examine the odor issues and, at Academy Creek in relation to not only what's coming out of the plant, but at the upstream lift stations to determine the best, most cost-effective way to manage the odors and gases coming from the sewage. At this time, staff did an evaluation and recommends that Stantec be awarded the contract for the study in the amount of $51,499.
A motion?
I so move.
I'll second. Question, Jimmy, can you help me understand a little bit broader on the scope as to what they actually will be doing?
They're going to be looking at, there's any number of ways to deal with odors, particularly since you've got upstream flows coming into the plant that contribute to the problem, and the residence time and what's going on with those. Frequently, wastewater utilities will add chemicals at upstream lift stations to minimize the biochemistry that creates those odors and to drive it towards a different kind of biochemistry that doesn't. The other option is just to wait and look at it at the plant itself, and as the water comes in the influent, the turbulence and whatnot, the odors or the gases that we're trying to control will degas in the raw sewage wet well. You can capture it there and treat it. The other issue that we've got to keep in mind is that as that water goes on, the chemistry, if all you're doing is capturing the gas, the chemistry there that's creating those gases continues to function as it flows into the plant. So we may want to do something in the way of oxygen injection or a space cone that would change the dynamics of what's going on and prevent it from releasing more gas further into the plant in the processes.
So,
We're asking them to take a look at these, the dynamics of this system, including the 8 lift stations listed here, which are the upstream stations, and analyze what options there would be. Is it a combination of chemical addition upstream, along with capital investments to treat the gases at the raw sewage wet well, speaks cone to keep the gases down internally? Because remember, the other thing about these gases, besides the fact that they don't smell real good, is the fact that they do create problems within the plant just by being emitted throughout the plant.
so a follow-on question here is, do they establish a background of information, the bacterial content, if you will, the BOD, at certain areas, measure the gases? I mean, how do we know that we've achieved an improvement empirically?
We've got data. Staff has worked previously to examine what was going on there. In fact, we've even looked at certain chemical addition at one of the major upstream stations prior. We looked at we got baseline data from what's being released in the wet well for a period of time before we started that study. And then we collected data while we were doing the study. But there is baseline data that we've got. And I want to say we were averaging somewhere between 200, 400 ppm of the stuff we're trying to deal with.
At raw sewage, yes.
Yeah, at raw sewage, hydrogen sulfide.
As part of this, they're also gonna get baseline samples at all the lift stations as well.
Okay, so they gather this additional baseline information, then they recommend a specific mix, if you will, for the targeted locations. And then if we accept that, then we execute that plan, okay? And then once the plan is executed, then we can go back and measure again to compare against the baseline.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank-
Do we have the internal capability to do that measuring?
Yes, we can use what's called otologgers. They're basically little hanging samplers that you hang in wet wells, and they record continuous, and you can download them and get all that information dumped out. That's what we do currently at the raw sewage well. We have 2 of them, one at the surface and one at the actual water surface, because there's differences based off the elevation. So we can use those otologgers in the lift stations as well.
Okay, and I just thought of one other thing, Commissioner, thank you for asking that question. So we have these odor loggers that we place in our facilities. What about at some distance from the facility? Are we doing any kind of remote monitoring?
We do remote monitoring at some locations throughout the system, particular manholes that we know have had issues either with a odor issue or for whatever reason corrosion problems, which typically is due to odor problems, or the same issues rather. So we have a crew that is what they do, is they go around doing testing and sampling. They do in situ sampling for dissolved sulfides. They also check the odor loggers, and they have to be recalibrated periodically. So we have one crew that's what they do.
Right, and where I was going with this, Andrew, is that we can communicate to the public that, hey, we've done the study.
Yes, sir.
We've implemented the recommendations from the study, and now we've confirmed the results of the actions.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's what I want to be able to connect, and that we can communicate to folks that, okay, we recognize the problem, we put a fix in place, and we've verified that. So
Yes, sir.
once this project is done, the final execution is, then we want to have kind of close the loop on the information to share with the public.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Duncan, were you asking, when you said, were there remote sampling, were you talking about other assets, or were you talking about remote as in outside the fence line there at the plant?
Yeah, outside the fence line, because that's where our customers
Joining
are,
the
right?
Immediate area?
Right.
Okay.
We
Because
have
that's where we'll get most of the input, won't we, from our customers?
That is it.
We have non-sewer assets in
Out
close
there.
proximity that we could easily install these at some of the water production facilities and things like that we could get a good reading.
Yeah, and I'd suggest to gather that information before we execute the fix
Yes, sir.
in those same places, and then we'll measure afterwards.
Yes, sir.
Because there's some ambient information out there that comes from some of our neighbors that are in industrial processes too. Thank you.
I've got several questions. First off, where are the funds coming from this?
This is a City of Brunswick funded project. They have $160,000 in SPOS funds remaining, I believe, from SPOS 5, that they have been, that were earmarked for Academy Creek odor control. And we have verified with them that they are in agreement with performing the study first rather than just spending the money. So City of Brunswick is actually funding this product. We would actually pay the funds and then they'll reimburse us.
Okay, second, we've had previous studies done.
We've done some trials, yes, sir.
We did some trials. We did some trials, but we also had another firm
At the raw sewage,
did us
yes,
a
sir.
report,
Yes, sir.
both at the plant and at some of the pump stations, I thought.
There were samples taken at a couple, but not all 8.
Not all 8, but rehab of the Academy Creek plant. That's also looking at odor control, right?
The current Husky Gate contract is just for the oxygen system.
What about for the one that we're taking bid,
We're taking bids on that
proposals
for
right now?
odor control for the
Right.
actual design of the facilities at the plant.
But this is going to address that also.
Yes, sir. So we'll have this study back very early on in that contract awards area, so we can provide that to them as part of that as well.
Isn't that firm in that proposal supposed to be doing that work?
They were at the pre-proposal. I don't know if they're gonna submit a full bid or not, but they were at the pre-proposal.
But isn't the firm that's going to be, isn't that proposal, does not that proposal include analyzing odor control at the Academy Creek plant?
Just at Academy Creek.
So we got two different people looking at it.
Yes, sir. But this one includes the upstream stuff.
Okay. Now, Evoqua Water Technologies, how was their proposal different? I know they're a manufacturer.
Right. Evoqua's technology proposal was to look at their actual,
But they've got every different type of
Right.
odor control
they were looking at
products.
different odor controls. They were talking about some vapor-based stuff. They were talking about a dioxide product, but they were strictly going to look at Evoqua products only. And so we did not want to necessarily pigeonhole ourselves into one particular manufacturer with the study.
Okay, I just want to make sure once we get this done, we'll have something that we can lay our hat on and we can get it going, so we'll have odor control solved as well as it can be solved.
As best as we can, yes, sir.
Now, what did we do as a staff? What was the chemical addition we were adding?
We use magnesium hydroxide lime slurry. That can be effective in odor control and also provide some alkalinity boost at the plant. The problem we had with the trial that we ran was it was not flow-based. So we happened to do it in a rainy part of the year, so we had times where when the flows were normal, it did very well, but when the flows got out of kilter because of the high flows, we did not do very well with it.
So how long did we conduct that?
60 days.
So this firm, we're asking them to complete everything in 60 days, but they're going to have to look at different processes in a 60-day period. Well, is that going to be enough time for them to complete it?
According to their proposal, it will be. They're the one that came up with the 60-day time frame.
What did the other firms come up with?
Some of them were 90 days, most of them were 60. I think 3 of the 4 were 60 and 1 was 90.
So if I understand Commissioner Thompson's question and your response, weather is gonna, climate is gonna dictate what some of the results could be.
For a chemical addition, you have to flow pace based off of loading in the actual water. So the design doesn't necessarily have to be, you don't have to take samples at different flows. You just have to be able, if you are gonna add chemical, to have the feed pump run off a PLC that's based off of a flow meter so that you can increase when the flows get higher. So that's not necessarily gonna change the study per se. The trial that we did not have everything. We didn't go through the programming step of flow pacing the actual dosage of the magnesium hydroxide lime slurry as part of that trial. So that's why at high flows it was not effective, because it didn't increase, whether there was at the plant 6 million or 15 million gallons of water going through, it was getting the same dose.
I just don't see in 60 days how they can complete this. That's going to give us something that we're sure is going to work. I mean, right now, we've already spent a lot more than 60 days testing things, and we had another firm also look at Academy Creek, and yet we've yet to come up with a firm solution.
Would you
So
like to extend the time frame for them?
Well, I just want to make sure that the scope of work is including that we come up with a process that we know is going to work.
The scope of work is for them to look at the different processes and provide us with cost analysis of multiple alternatives. Vapor phase, liquid addition, and static.
But if they're just giving us cost estimates for the different processes, they're not going to recommend the process.
They will recommend the process based off the life cycle costs.
Okay.
So, if I understood your last comment, their recommendation may be based more on cost than
No, it's gonna have to be effective.
effectiveness?
It's gonna have to be effective, but if you can treat odor in 5 different ways and it's all effective, you want the one that's gonna be the lowest life cycle cost over.
I don't dispute that, you're asking them to make some trade-offs.
Certainly, I mean, if it's a tenth the cost and 95% is effective, that may be something we wanna look at.
Let me follow on with a question then about the background information we already have, and then they're going to gather some. Do we have a target, a measurable target to achieve that their study would provide the direction for the remedy based on a target amount?
Yeah, so the ideal amount would be to get it below 1 part per million hydrogen sulfide.
Okay.
10 parts per million is considered the unsafe zone. So 1 part per million, you sometimes can notice the odor at 1 part per million, but not everyone can smell the odor at 1 part per million. You can actually get it lower than that, but if we can get it to 1, we'll have made tremendous progress.
Understand, that's why I'm focusing my comments on empirical data
Right.
that's measurable by instrument.
Right.
So as long as we have that as a part of the scope for our service vendor, then we know or should have some confidence that their solution is driving toward the target that we're wanting to achieve.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I'm comfortable
Yes.
with it.
So, since there's 160K here, and we're spending 51 of it, that leaves roughly 109
$9,000.
left. What's gonna happen to that money?
That money will be used to pay for the construction of odor control facilities as part of this, that the study recommends if we move forward.
Okay. But that's not any part of this contract?
No, sir. They requested we do not use their $160,000 on chemicals. They wanted to buy equipment if we were gonna spend money with it, so that's why we didn't just dose stuff as part of this.
Okay.
So the $51,000 is going to include this firm putting in equipment, sampling it, testing it, and making sure it's doing the job it's supposed to be doing.
Not putting in equipment, not putting in odor control equipment, just sampling and looking at options to eliminate the odors. They're not gonna actually run any trials as part of this.
But there's no guarantee that they get the follow-on contract?
No guarantees that they'll get the following contract, no, sir.
What was Evoqua Water Technologies' scope of work?
Same thing.
Only difference being they were gonna apply their technology to the.
They weren't gonna run, both were not gonna run trials, they were just gonna look at the options taken and then from there back to
We already got a study that said for the pump stations and the Academy Creek plant. So why are we doing another study, is my question. It didn't do all the pump stations, but the pump stations aren't gonna be a whole lot different.
I may address that, because I kind of
Okay.
asked Mr. Burrows to conduct a study, because as he indicated, what we wanted is the lowest long-term operating and
Yeah.
total life cycle cost. The studies we had weren't conclusive in my mind, because they didn't do that. So this is the opportunity to take what we do know, what we don't know, put it into a cost analysis to keep our long-term view of what's going on focused on the optimal solution.
And so what they come up with will be shared with the firm that's gonna be doing the Academy Creek work.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we had a motion?
I'll move that we'll enter into a contract with Stantec in the amount of $51,499 for engineering services to conduct an odor control study for Academy Creek Water Pollution Control Facility.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Let's proceed to the discussion section. Manhole rehab RFP and schedule.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Burrows and staff looked at the remaining manholes that have been identified. There's some 68 that were identified that are still in need. The plan is to put these together in a bid package that will be prepared and ready to go out before the July 1 start of the new fiscal year, and hopefully allow us to receive the bids and be able to execute the bids early in the fiscal year 2019-2020. The discussion here is that we want to go back, based on the history that we've had with the super coat, and continue to use super coat as the primary coating to rehab these stations. As it indicates here, we've got 4 years of work on some of the manholes that have been super coated, and they have held up and look to be in pristine condition. The super coat material goes with a 10-year warranty on the application, so it's a pretty good, it'll give us a pretty good window of protection there, and I assume that it'll more than likely last beyond that, but we don't have actual data as yet on what it would do. I guess the thing here we're looking at is if we have it, we're still talking about the same kind of funds that we've budgeted in the past, maybe a little bit less because we're only doing 68 manholes, but we are looking at about $8,000 to $10,000 per manhole, and that's depending on the depth of the manhole. So ballpark guess, conservatively, $680,000 total, 68 manholes.
And your operating budget can support this?
The one for 2020 does support this.
In this year's operating budget, we had $1 million for manhole rehab.
Yes, sir.
We've not reached that yet, have we?
Yes, sir.
We have not spent all of that money to date, no, sir.
And so we're gonna stop rehabbing manholes until we take bids, is this what this is telling me?
Yes, sir.
We're only gonna rehab the ones that are causing sinkhole issues in roadways so that we don't
So,
cause.
so how many is, how many of that?
There's at least 3 or 4 more that's on the list that they're getting done as part of that.
That's not in the 68.
Not in the 68, yes, sir. These are the ones that we can wait. We don't want to wait, but we can wait because we have to get the work
Okay.
out.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, the super coat, is that a product that's readily available to multiple vendors?
Contractors?
Yes.
We
Okay.
know of at least 4 different applicators that can put this in, and then
Okay.
Superboat will provide you with a list of approved applicators with a simple phone call.
Okay. I just didn't want to get tied to a single product and a single applicator.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, at the last facilities meeting, or the last one I was able to attend, there there was a comment, a question about how many total we had in the system. Talking to staff, they haven't examined every manhole in our system, but it does look like there's between 800 and 1,000 is the information I got back total, just based on the typical occurrence. That's what Mr. Young. gave me.
Right, and these are just the ones that are scoring a 4 or a 5 on a 5-point scale as far as
Condition.
urgent needs.
800 to 1,000 manholes that we have in the system?
We have 8,000 manholes.
8,000, okay. Next item is Academy Creek phosphorus levels.
Yes, sir. It's kind of a, I'm gonna let Mr. Burris discuss this, because basically what it looks like is there's been, because of the rain flows we've had, it's caused problems within the plant that were, our efforts to address the problems were such that it caused us to break the normal process patterns of decanting our digesters and, in essence, sending back a nutrient-rich stream back in at a point and drain it back to the head of the plant, which in turn creates problems in the process at that point and caused us to kind of bulk up the phosphorus content coming in. And I kind of summarizing.
You know, that makes sense, but shouldn't our influence sampling be based ahead of where that return comes into the plant?
It is not, the influence sampler is up at the aerated grid system.
Maybe we need to move the influence sampler then.
I'm trying to think where we could move it to. That-
Because it's not supposed to have that train coming into it for the influence sampling.
Okay. We'll have to look at that, because the way that the supernatant comes back through, it goes into a 42-inch gravity that runs down alongside the
Yeah.
railroad track.
Yeah,
So there's literally nowhere that you could sample all the influent lines at one time. but
what
that's
other
not-
processed water comes into that line?
Any of our, the filtrate water for the belt filter press, any washdown water from the solids building gets pushed back.
Don't we have a plant pump station around there someplace in the backside?
We have rehab water that, we have rehab water.
But don't we have a plant pump station that pumps
That's
the
correct,
drainage
right
right from the
there by-
clarifiers and all?
Yes, the RAS pump station, yes, sir. So the RAS is fed back to the top of the splitter box up there past the sampler.
Yeah, couldn't this decant be going to that pump station?
And we can look at that as part of the
Yeah.
improvements, sure. But right now, it does go back.
Because we're getting false phosphorus levels.
It
we
is
don't know
causing
what we have.
elevated levels, yes, sir.
And we need to look at that at Academy Dunbar also.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The levels are down now?
They're not down yet. You gotta remember, digesters, you're looking at a 1 to 2 month retention time in there.
Yeah.
So it takes a while for it to all work its way through the system. We're not having any effluent discharge problems, it's just the numbers are elevated coming into the plant.
So it's not going out.
We are not regulated on the amount of phosphorus that goes out of our plant,
Just sampling right now.
just sampling and reporting. And one thing I will say, we give 1 sample a month for phosphorus.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like we get this, we didn't have 15 parts come in every single day, that was just 1 sample in February.
Just as an aside, I met a person at the conference, I included an email that exchange that he and I had, because they have a pure oxygen plant, but it's a 2-stage, and ours is a 1-stage, is that correct?
No, we have 2 stations.
2-stage?
Because of the
It's all,
digesters.
all of the change.
So, but he gave me what their current limit is, and it seemed like that limit was a lot lower than what we were achieving.
Yes, sir. Right now it is, because we're not operating the plant to remove phosphorus.
Okay.
You can change the way you operate if you need to meet different permit limits, and phosphorus is not a permit limit of ours right now.
Okay. But I guess the question is the phosphorus creates algae. Does that create a problem where we are? I mean,
They are currently doing,
Georgia coast?
the state is currently going through all the river basins and water bodies in the state doing TMDL modeling on phosphorus. So they are currently sampling and studying that.
Historically, the plants that need phosphorus removal in the state of Georgia are those that discharge where they have a large reservoir, lake below,
Right.
downstream,
Right,
Yeah,
and that's where it gives the worst problems.
that's correct.
yeah, I think we're going into the ocean, so, you know,
And this
Are we
plant,
okay with that?
this plant, even though what they're saying, this plant can be modified, we can do biological phosphorus in this plant too if a process change.
You just put
Just, just like we'd have to do the same thing at Academy Creek if we're gonna do biological phosphorus removal. But with the levels that we normally have in here, we can just use chemical addition and use the filters that are going in at Academy Creek to meet the future phosphorus levels.
Are we anticipating regulatory change?
Not until 2023 at the earliest, right?
Well, the permit's up for renewal right now. We certainly don't expect it as part of this renewal cycle. So the next renewal cycle will be 5 years from now. So that's-
then they'll give you time to change your plant as much as you need to.
Usually if they give you a new limit, they give you a phased-in approach that you can get there if you have to make process changes. So there'll be a compliance schedule in there, you know. If they gave you a limit that you couldn't hit, we'll just use round numbers here. Let's say you had 10 going out of the plant and they wanted you to hit 1. The first year they want you to hit 5, the second year they want you to hit 2, and the third year they want you to hit 1. So they give you time to.
And they know you're gonna have to do some construction to do it, and you gotta get the funding for it and everything else, so sometimes you have 3 or 4 years to get it done.
They understand that some things, process changes, they're not unreasonable about it.
The next item is update on the status of CCT video.
Mr. Chairman, basically, the work's been CCTV'd, and what we found is that most of the lines are in relatively good shape, either already lined or they're plastic lines. The one area on our work from, not Bloodhound, but,
Yep. Bloodhound was the Bloodhound area is the one that needs.
yeah, Bloodhound, their effort, but the guys we just finished up with, they didn't find anything particularly bad in the lines they went through. It was just manholes needing help. But the Bloodhound folks, on the other hand, doing the further upstream work, they found probably 6,000 to 8,000 feet, am I in the right estimate, of line that will need some attention. And again, the manholes in those areas needed some help as well.
Where's that 6,000 feet?
That's down B&W Grade Road in Whitlock coming into pump station 4035. So it's the area downstream of the force main from 4036. It appears that everything, we're gonna have the lines all 30 inch, all the 36 and 42 below 35. Looks like it's either previously been lined or is in, plastic is in good shape. So,
4036 is the one up by the canal?
yes, sir. 35 is the one right there on the side of 341.
And is that a concrete line?
Yes, sir. It's RCP, yes, sir.
It's never been lined?
No, sir.
Okay.
They lined the downstream from 35, but they never lined the 36 line. So there's reinforcement showing.
Is this within the scope of the original project?
Yes, sir.
Did we anticipate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're still net minus overall on the scope, since we found the most downstream part of the 36 and the 42 are in good condition,
That is correct.
less the manholes. I think there were like 9 manholes or something like that.
There's a few
Okay.
manholes in there, so yes, sir, there, we are net, below on what our original estimate was because of this.
Okay.
Did you estimate we were gonna have to rehab this many manholes?
We included every manhole as part of the estimate, just as a worst-case scenario.
So
We're okay on that.
so hopefully we'll get it in the available splash funds.
There's a chance, I won't say it's 100%, there's a chance we could get it in the available SPOS funds.
And these 65 are not a part of the other manholes on the system of 69 that were planned for. Yeah.
There's a couple that overlap that we'll pull out, but in general, they are not. No.
Okay. Okay.
A schedule for Ridgewood Water Production Facility project.
Mr. Chairman, staff looked at, and Todd's taken Mr. Klein has taken a look at it. We spent $935,000 of the $1 million that was budgeted. We have plans on hand for the design. He's made a request back to the original engineer of record, L.O. Richardson Jr. PE LLC, to do the updates and contract administration services. He hadn't received anything as of today. If they get it back and it's acceptable, we'll provide notice to proceed with the engineer's opinion on probable cost, whatever that turns to be there. Advertise for construction bidding based on everything working right and Mr. Richardson getting back to us timely, May 1st.
That's advertised for construction bidding by May 1st, so that would be the advertisement would go out at that
That's
time.
correct. We would advertise by May 1st, and then it would take the normal 60 days to bid and award and.
Did their original scope of services include submitting the plans to EPD for approval?
I'm not sure on that, but the EPD approval is only good for a year, so we have.
I know. Have we requested that in their new scope of services?
Yes, sir.
Was there, did y'all review the previous contract to see what,
I personally have not.
because I think when we look at their, the proposal, we need to review it, because in the original contract, they probably had some of these items in there,
Yes, sir.
and we can see what the costs were, and then we can say, compare that with what they're proposing now.
All right.
I'm afraid that budget's low.
We also assume that will need to be a budget adjustment for that one.
This is the ground storage, right?
It's got a ground storage tank at it, but it's developing a well. Item 5, update all water production facilities, recommended repairs, upgrades.
See, this is the, water production, ourselves are in decent shape is what was reported. We've got some motor work, we've got some painting that needs to be done, and we've got, some of the painting was already included in the 5-year, capital plans that we submitted or tried to go through this past fall. Brunswick Villa ground storage tank is actually 2 small ground storage tanks, and it, put together, one of them is older than the other, it says, and, could stand to be replaced. Let's see, the painting needs, we've got, Prince Street, Demere, and the mall both need interior and exterior painting. Old Thorpe Tank, needs exterior painting. Perry Park needs interior painting combined with painting needs, that are 1.5 to 2 million. And let me see if that covers everything we put in for the capital plan. Perry Street, Wall Street. So he's got everything I've got.
Did we have the new pumps in there too, in the capital plan?
No, sir, I did not. I'll add those.
And replacing the motors?
Yeah, those.
Have either of y'all gone to the Brunswick Villa ground storage tank?
Yes, sir. There's 2 rectangular tanks there. One of them was original to the Brunswick-Glynn site, which I believe was installed in the 40s.
Rectangular tanks, so they
Rectangular.
standpipes?
Sir?
They're standpipes?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And they're piped together. They put another tank in there as the first pipe, but once they, as the system demand grew, they piped them together. The older tank, EPD has mentioned a couple of times that they wish that one was no longer in service. There's nothing wrong with the tank from it's not leaking, it's not letting anything in. They just would like to see it replaced or taken offline. We can't necessarily take it offline because then we won't have the adequate ground storage capacity. So we left it online for now. We're having we got to do some touch-up stuff around it that they requested us doing there, but all in all, it's a wish list item, not necessarily.
Did the county put that system in, or was it,
That's the city,
did the city put it in?
as far as I know, yes.
This is located there at Whitlock and Townsend.
Yes. There were actually plans at one point to get rid of that well altogether. So it may be prudent to just get rid of that well altogether, then replace the tanks. But if we're going to keep the well in service, we need to look at the other ground storage tanks.
Well, I think that you'd want to do a system review of overall what's the hydraulic needs, what's the storage needs, and then from there address, is this a target for replacement or retirement at that particular location?
The reason it was listed for retirement was it's the nearest well to the salt plume.
Okay.
So that's literally the only reason it was listed on that.
What size well is it?
No, I think it's a 12-inch well, but I
What's the capacity, you know?
have no idea.
Perry Street, salt plumes,
Update large meter testing program.
okay. Large meter testing program, that's gonna be a task that the distribution maintenance, division will take on. We've gone out and gotten pricing on test meters. Looks like census meters, are gonna be the choice that we go with. They're approximately $4,500 a piece. We'll get two. One will do everything up to 6 inches, and the second one will do anything 6 inches and greater. Our anticipated start date would be, we budgeted for the meters in this 2020 budget, so we'll have, our desire is to go out and procure them as soon after the budget's approved as possible. We'll start with the largest customers by volume and work our way down to analyze where our opportunities are. And one of the things we'll commit to is doing an estimate of revenue recovery based on the results of the testing. So we'll see how much good we're doing as we go. And I will say, this is one of those things that I kind of think we're doing a really good thing here. When we did it at the other utility Andrew and I were at, we got extremely good results because, like us, they hadn't done any testing on those old meters for decades and found huge opportunities in some of them.
How many meters are in this group? Approximately 500?
2-inch and greater, there's a couple thousand. If you take the 2 inches out, it's like 800.
Okay. Thank you.
We have a lot of 2-inch meters.
And how often do we propose to test them?
So the largest meters, the 8-inch meters and stuff, I would suggest testing annually. So I would do a graduated scale based off the size of the meter.
The large meters, you go out there, you take this meter out there and bypass it, and that's how you test it, or
That's correct.
something like that?
Isn't there an AWWA standard or recommendation?
The AWA recommendation is no worse than 97.5 or 98.5% accuracy.
I'm speaking of frequency for testing.
Oh, yes, sir. They want you to test 10% annually, and they recommend you can do it more frequently on your larger meters.
That's 10% of all your meters.
10% of all your meters.
And we don't test any meters right now.
No, sir. We do not test any meters right now.
Okay, well, that's our cash register.
So will we be trying to test 10% of our meters once we get these?
We're gonna go after the large ones first and try to expand the program.
Now, will this be one person doing it full-time, or two people doing it full-time?
Be part of the cruise and water distribution that will be handling it.
Okay.
Normally it's two though, normally it's get sent out because there's the weight of those testers and things they've got to do.
I would suggest that you track your cost so you can compare to what the market is offering for this same service.
Yes, sir.
It's a good target,
Contract.
not specifically to outsource, but it's information that can be communicated to the employees. Say, hey, you can go across the street and get this for X. This is our bogey internally to keep this work.
Yes, sir. I will say that, one thing that may help us out with this water distribution is very excited about starting this program. So,
Motivation is
they are
halfway
very
there.
gung-ho about going with it, so.
They are?
Just ring the cash register.
Also, I thought we were gonna talk about the 2 meters we were gonna purchase for CPOMs to
We're
measure that.
sourcing those now, going through, making sure water distribution's looking at them to see which ones they necessarily, which brand they wanna go with, they're getting prices, so they're in the process of getting those ordered.
When will we get those?
We should have them ordered within the next week or so.
Okay.
I don't know about lead time, depending on who we go with.
Do you know how much they're gonna cost?
Should be, both of them should be less than 20,000 combined. Can't be too bad there. Usually the clamp on meters are 8 to 10 grand a piece.
Next item is possible 2020 SPOS recommended projects.
Yes, sir. Staff's looked at this pretty closely. We've been working very closely with the county and the city to the extent that the city's working on it. The county, as you may be aware, has already turned out a tentative list of 80-some odd projects that and it's broken out by category and type of project. We anticipated that wherever there might be overlap, we wanted to make sure that we looked at our assets in those areas and were prepared and included those as, if there was need for work to be done, we included those in our project. So our first priority is to make sure that we're aligned with what they're doing and that any projects or assets we've got that are potentially to be overlapping, we've checked them out, and if there's need for project, do it. The second priority we put in here was to look at the opportunity to go in and take care of additional energy or alternative pumping for assets that might be damaged during a storm or affected by a storm, or lose power or take lightning strikes. So we want to have, we'd like to take a look at that and make our list from what we've got currently coming, and hopefully by the time the list comes along, we'll know what our hazmat grant applications have generated in the way of some of this, and we'll be able to better evaluate which specific stations we want to put them on. The next area that we wanted to address, and we've got some large areas that are in need just because of the amount of old clay pipe we've got in the ground, but we want to address the inflow and infiltration, which we know to be impacting our stations on Dunbar and at Academy Creek to the tune of 40 or 50% sometimes on average coming into the plant. So we've got some great opportunities to improve on cost, but the other issue that occurs when you get a lot of I&I is that it impacts the actual ability of the process within the plant to do its thing effectively. So there's some needs here. We've got the areas identified, and depending on what's left after the first two get done, we've got specific areas that we want to map out based on flows and on the flow monitoring. The flows, Mr. Burris has taken a look at from SCADA and figured out which of our plants in the Brunswick area have high or excess flows, extremely excess flows in the wet weather. And we've also taken a look at the needs as generated by the McKim Creed study on Dunbar, on St. Simon's Island, to evaluate which basins are going to be our big target areas to try to address this. But overall, we're going to make a big impact on lift station 4002, incoming collector lines, and we're looking at 2002 on St. Simon's Island as a basin that we want to pay a lot of attention to. The next priority we have in our list of opportunities is various water improvement projects that were listed in our 2015 master plan. We've looked through and we've got a short list of things we wanted to do that have not already been addressed in some form or fashion prior. The next project that we have deals with help on economic development out at exit 42. We wanted to look at, and there's been discussion about the need for a tank and a well out there. The well to provide Floridan aquifer water, which is, greater supply, and we don't have maybe the best well situation to supply that area. The other thing is to put in an elevated storage tank to provide for emergency needs out there, especially for the Tradewinds Industrial Park and any other developments that might pop up out there. And, there's a lot of opportunity for things to grow out there. The next priority for funds that we put in was for to basically take a look. We talked earlier about the study we're doing for expanded water and sewer services in some neighborhoods that have needs. So our next, again, we assume by the time this starts to really form up really tight, we ought to have a good idea of what the situation is, what the costs are, and what the best options are to address some of those big needs. And so we're saying right now we would put these in some priority into the SPLOST requests. Beyond that, the next area that jumps out at us is the fact that we've got a lot of cast and ductile iron force mains in our sewer pump stations, which we know that based on history here and elsewhere, there's some great potential for eating up lines there that, or not eating up, that's the wrong term, lines that probably have a limited future life left in them, and it'd be great to go out there and address those now. And of course, we have some transite out there, a very small amount that we'd like to enforce mains, that we'd like to proactively eliminate as a part of our request on SPLOST. And then lastly, we wanted to look at, we've talked a great deal here lately about the system-wide replacement of our meters, as we're basically having our current meters in many areas starting to fail because of the age of the batteries on those transmitters. This is a big enough dollar issue that this might be a good fit for a SPLOST project in general. And based on the payback period, the SPLOST period that's being discussed, our phased approach might work out really well with what's going on with the next SPLOST if it comes to reality.
Just a few comments. Timing on the 2020 SPLOST, assuming that the voters approve it, those funds wouldn't be available until probably FY 21 or 22.
21.
Not all of the funds.
No.
It'd be a little bit of it. And we're probably third at that feed trough for getting that when the funds are available. So I'll be very careful about including in the scope, timing, and the milestones for projects. Understand that where's the need and when the funds could become available. I would like to see a tabular list instead of a word list. And what I suggest you do is associate them based on priorities, not unlike what you've already done, but associate them, our projects that would be co-located with county and city projects. Then, as you mentioned, economic development ones, like the elevated storage tank and possible well there. It should be easy enough to put a dollar amount on that and say, okay, this is $1 million, or it's a $2 million, or it's a $3 million project. I would suggest that that one would probably receive a lot of support from our friends in economic development and the county to provide that, and certainly it would it should integrate well into a hydraulic study for that end of the county for the water resources. Another that you probably should include is we have sort of in the back of our minds to develop Academy Creek Administration Facility, I'll call it, or Operations Office. In addition to being our disaster response center, we've had that conversation. That should be on the list also. That 2.1 million should be a SPLOST project on the list. So, Jimmy, I would say that next time you give us an update, put it in a tabular form, put a scope to it, show what lines up with the city and county's list. You know, I understand it's in the want list.
And we can
So far, you know,
We
they,
can clearly get maps for each of the projects. I was trying to give it in a more general form today, because one of our biggest issues is, our number one priority is to make sure we're lined up with the city and the county.
exactly.
At this point, the only details they have on their projects are the names I've got here. We've asked them for maps to overlap. We were gonna do exactly what you're saying, but they're just not to the point where they can tell us.
Right, understand. Let's keep pushing that one.
We are.
So that we don't get behind and then we get surprised with a project that, oh, it's gonna cost us $1 million because so-and-so is gonna improve a 2-mile road.
I totally agree.
Those kind of things, if it's the SPLOST project for the community, then it ought to be funding the utility relocation or upgrades, et cetera. And our upgrades ought to be scoped only what is necessary, not what we'd like to do just because the road's tore up. Because we can always do replacements outside the pavement.
Totally in agreement, and in fact, that's exactly what we were hoping. My intent had been, had we been able to get the more detailed boundaries of their projects, to overlap it on our stuff and look at where we've already done the assessments and figure out where else we had to do it. But certainly, we are going to make thorough assessments before we just jump in.
Right, and I would suggest just, even right now, we need to have some numbers. If the county says, well, this street will be 8,000 feet, it's gonna have to be dealt with, or it's 800 feet. We should be able to come up with a thumbnail estimate at this very early stage, so then we get down to the bottom line, we say, okay, here's our number, how's that gonna play with the other agencies? And then we're gonna know right away what that line's going to be.
We can do that.
I'm kinda thinking it's gonna be similar to what we already have, unless we get a lot more community support to push the number higher. Because when I've seen the one list there,
Oh, this one.
yeah, that's a big list there that's not necessarily all infrastructure related. So, that's where we need to push
The lion's share
for.
of this, it'll be tough for us to get much.
Well, again, that's their kind of first list.
Yep.
But we need to be in there pushing it as hard as we can. And as soon as we can put a number to these things, even though our friends over at the other agencies don't have a number, we put our number in there, and that's a starter.
I agree. And one of the things, Commissioner Duncan, we asked for that, I mean, it wasn't just a map, we were asking for anything.
Understand?
But we'll keep pushing, as you say. And one of the things I will go ahead and give you a heads up on is, in talking to the city engineer, if I understand him correctly, third party relating, they're gonna ask for blocks of money as opposed to specific situations and areas to be fixed. So what we're talking about doing at this point, when they decide what the blocks of money are, we're just gonna ask for dollar if they can't define the projects.
Yeah, we'll just have to address that when,
Does the SPLOST
They-
law allow that?
I don't know.
I thought you had, I mean, they were pretty broad now, but I thought you had to
I think
be
they're
more
gonna have.
definitive.
I agree with you. I think they're gonna have to come up with some sort of definition to be able to get this over the hurdle for the voters.
I'm thinking is, like they have done in some of the past laws, is call things out again in a kind of nebulous way. Stormwater improvements, street improvements, and as long as the money is applied to those specific types of projects as opposed to a specific project, they can get it through.
Okay.
It
Well,
makes it difficult for us to be supporting.
We'll keep pushing.
The other thing is on the metering project to update those. You know, we may have to pull the trigger on that before these funds become available. And because that is a utility-only project, I don't have a high confidence level, or any confidence level, that it would be supported. So I think we need to think of that one as we own that one ourselves. And, you know, if we get a gift, great.
Yeah.
But I think that one is probably gonna be a little bit lower on the list, okay?
And that's why we have it at the bottom. I mean, realistically, I agree with what you said initially, and the fact is that we're the last person at the table. And this is, if by some chance there's still opportunities, we wanted to make sure we could cover whatever was available.
Well, here's where I look at it a little bit broader, is coupled with our testing program on the major or the large meters, when you put those two together, it ought to be a net plus.
Yeah.
Okay. When you look at the life cycle of this meter change out, I mean, just the one proposal we've had already, and we already had sort of peeps at a few others that sort of look better. So the life cycle cost on that, plus what we gain with the large meter testing on the revenue side, that ought to cover it pretty well. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But, so that's why I say we probably should just own that one as opposed to trying to lobby that one forward. I'd much rather see you get our storm response center, that consolidation
I'll make that
project,
change.
okay?
I've got it in, and we'll, as you indicated, put it in a tabular form.
Those are good comments. I've got a couple more. The second priority, the emergency assets and generators.
Yes, sir.
We've got an application for FEMA and GEMA funds.
Yes, sir.
Isn't that going to address these?
It'll address some, but we're gonna wait and see how that does. I mean, there's no absolute guarantees at this point.
But I mean, if we get that, that will address
Oh,
most
yeah.
of our needs.
But it has been a concern in the community.
Yeah,
You know, we
okay.
didn't have, so
Yeah.
we wanna make sure if we're still sitting out there needing, we plugged it in.
With the FEMA funds, if we get approval we applied for, we're only gonna get 5 generators, 10 generators, 3 for water facilities, 2 generators to replace ones at Academy Creek, and 5 portable generators for use in a storm event. So this would be to add permanent bypass pumps at larger stations, so we could use those portables for the smaller stations.
Are any of our generation units dual fuel?
Not right now.
Okay, so the units are either diesel or gasoline.
The vast majority are diesel, we have a handful of gas.
It's probably the portable ones.
And we have a couple of natural gas generators.
Okay. But most of the small units you can buy is dual fuel, to run on natural gas or propane and gasoline
Right.
for very little cost. But, you know, from within 10% usually.
Okay. Check it with that.
So just a comment on this kind of, I use the term materiel. There's an operating maintenance that's got to be performed, and we need to start looking at what the cost of having all this stuff is going to be before we go asking for it.
We talked about that. And, you know, between the test runs that you gotta do and the annual inspections and PMs that you gotta do, there's gonna be some cost with it, but it's kinda like insurance against a storm.
Well, I guess we just need to have an explanation if we have to raise the rates because of it.
Item 3, the II in Brunswick.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna look at the pump stations, right? And the pump run times,
That's what
We,
we've done.
that's what we did.
and have we got that, when are we gonna get that report or something on that?
I've got all the ones done for the city of Brunswick district. I don't have the ones done in North Mainland yet.
So you've got the run times and everything, so we can see where the II is, the
Yes.
problems?
I've got average runtime and peak runtime,
So when would we have that information, you think?
for your next meeting if you want.
Okay. The water improvement projects in the 2015 master plan. Are those mainly just replacing lines or the upsizing lines?
Both. They're the neighborhood projects, Fairway Oaks, Waverly Pines. There's some needs to upsize for increased
Okay.
fire flow, and some of it's condition-based. And there's, most of those are old transite lines.
Okay. All right. Next item is manufacturer warranty information on possible meter changes.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't have a lot to say on this one because basically, as we talked about in the previous meeting when we covered this, we're gonna be doing a matrix in basically an RFP, RFQ format to evaluate the different options with the different vendors. And the second sheet in your handout is at least the initial list of things, and Mr. Sellers has taken template RFPs that have been done by other utilities and gonna consolidate those into one that fits us. But if you'll notice on the one that I put out, the warranties was one of the issues. It'll be a consideration, it's just another item in the list of things that will be compared and rated.
Do all of these 4 different options have the same warranty?
Not
All of
necessarily.
those, all of those 4 have at least a 10-year warranty. Some of them have 20-year warranties, but even the ones that have 10 years have a 20-year prorated after year 10. So some of them do the full 20-year battery life and meter warranty, not prorated. Some of them do 10 years full and then 10 years prorated.
Are we looking, except for the GPC, are we looking at purchasing these
Yes, sir.
over a long period of time?
It depends on, the funding we're looking at, depending on how much funding we can allocate towards it. It may be a 5 to 7 year rollout period. It could be longer if we wanted to extend that out.
Because if we purchase them all at one time, all the warranties run out at the same time, and then all of a sudden you gotta spend that money again.
We personally can't get them all installed in 1 year.
Yeah, okay.
Well, a project of that scope, I think it'd be,
We'd have to farm that out.
yeah, it'd probably be better anyway, to pay on a commodity basis by the unit.
Okay, update on certain projects. Lift station 3114, is that the one in South Mainland?
Yes, sir. Budget $60,000, we've got the pumps in, we've ordered the panels that go with it. Panels, are due this month. So
Hopefully this week.
hopefully this week.
They have shipped from the manufacturer. They have not showed up yet.
So when will those pumps be installed?
They will be installed within the next 30 days once we get the panels here.
Okay.
That's their top priority once the panels get here.
Have we had anybody want to do taps in this area?
We have sold very few taps in Southport since this occurred.
We sold Rudy.
We have sold some upstream, but none in this direct basin.
Isn't this the one that we,
That is correct.
Yeah, it's like 65,000 or something to upgrade some of the piping.
yeah,
Pump-
because
pump
people were
motors.
saying that they couldn't tie on, but now,
60,000 for pumps and motors.
No, that-
We presented a phase 2 for 120 to relocate force main, because of, pressure from the area.
yeah.
So, yes.
Okay.
To answer your question, there's been very little interest since we've approved the sale of taps in that area.
But we have capacity now, we did not have capacity before.
That is correct. Once the pumps installed.
Yeah, so that when the next people come in, we've got capacity,
Absolutely.
and that's the main thing,
Yes, sir.
especially in new areas like that, okay. Lift station 4021, where's that pump station?
It's on side of Altam in front of Sonic.
Right, okay.
That's expansion, was that add pump?
We're going to replace the pumps and upsize a very short section of force main. I think it's 17 feet of force main.
So we're preparing the plans and the bid documents?
We are doing that.
Okay. Okay, the update is on the village area drainage improvements.
This is the project that's, we're working in conjunction with the county's storm drainage work over there. And as I understand it, shorten the project and reduce the amount of work they're gonna do. It's basically shrank the amount of work we're gonna do. To date, they found just a very few things that they're picking up at their cost as they go along. We haven't spent very much. It
We
looks
haven't
like
spent any.
haven't spent any.
There's been no invoices sent to us on this project yet.
So they reduced their project scope based on their exploration, looking at their drainage requirements and the issues they thought they might
Yeah.
have.
And they wanted to reduce, my understanding is reduce the disturbance and the
Shorten the project
duration.
time.
Yeah. So we're basically gonna hold those funds until the second phase, second phase of the village storm work is gonna open up a lot more of our stuff to get done.
When is that gonna be done?
I know
That's,
it's next block.
that's listed on their next SPOS.
Okay. So we may not have
So
anything.
So why do we need to hold the funds then?
Sure.
Why can't we just put the funds back in our reserve funds?
We can,
Okay.
we can.
Instead of
It's
holding
not a
them?
problem. We close this out. We talked about it, I talked about it with
Let's
Mr. Paul.
wait till they close theirs out. We'll
Yeah.
close it out completely, but as soon as they close it out, we can release the funds.
Yeah.
But at one time, we were gonna replace a water line.
We were gonna replace the water line across Mallory, but then they decided not to open cut Mallory, so we aren't going to do that.
Okay.
About 250 lineal feet, I think,
That's, yes,
which was, basically that's block.
that's correct. So once the county decided not to open cut it, we decided not to inconvenience the folks anymore about it.
Okay.
Okay, St. Simon's Island smoke testing?
Yes, sir. We held a kickoff meeting on the 25th of March. They've got a letter to proceed issued for May 1st. One of the things they talked about is as they went, there may be a lot of clean out caps and opportunities to put in what they call manhole pans to stop I&I from going into the lids.
That's a little plastic thing they put underneath the covers, yeah.
And they make them out of plastic, but they also make them out of stainless.
So we have those on hand?
We have a few on hand. We may be ordering some more, as part of this project, but we have a few on hand right now. We have, of course, clean out caps, we have dozens of those.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So we've got the door hangers approved, we've got a customer relations video done. Data presentation nomenclature has been approved, so we know what we're getting back when they get finished. JWC will get shape files, GIS shape files provided by the consultant. The note you have in your binder says they'll begin on June 3rd, but we had some discussion about that, and we've called them up, and they're indicating now that they'll be able to get in the first week of May. So it looks like a 3-week duration to complete the project.
So smoke testing is gonna start around the 1st of May?
He said 3-week duration.
3 to 4 weeks to do the smoke testing,
Oh,
and
so
time to
then-
actually go back and
Write the report.
So starting May 1st, it's gonna be 3 to 4 weeks. So
hopefully we'll be done by Memorial Day on the actual smoking part of it. The reports will not be ready then.
What's the time frame for the report after the,
It's a 150-day contract, so it'll be another 3 months, 4 months.
Hopefully
Yeah,
they
he's
give
saying
us some
August.
heads up before they.
August?
Yes, they will actually be, they're gonna actually be tagging, defects that are found live in the field into our GIS, so we'll be able to keep track of where they're at. And if they find any significant uh-oh moments with, like a cross connection with a storm drain or something, we'll be notified immediately so we can take care of it instead of it being a lingering problem.
One of the things we need to do on this is try to, I'll just call it estimate what the benefit is of how many gallons or something that we've eliminated in the I&I by doing this, the fixes after the study was completed. Because where I'm headed with this is, we need to understand is, okay, how much is
What's the
utility
value of our
versus
investment?
non-utility? What's our investment payback is on this, you know, impact to capacity. It's not an issue now, but it could be later, and then compare that to what the alternatives are.
The report should say which ones are more feasible to fix than others,
That is correct.
based on the drainage area that it serves and things like that.
That is correct. And if they go out there and find a cleanout cap off, they're just gonna put a cap on at that point. They're not going to request, that's just gonna be a quick fix. And if they're in a low-lying area where a manhole's gonna be submerged at any rain event, they're gonna put the fans out. I mean, not submerged in a hurricane, but just submerged from a standard 1-inch rain, which probably would put a drip pan in there.
The door hangers, did they prepare those, or did we prepare them?
McKinnon Creek prepared them, and we have reviewed them. They're both English and Spanish. They have our contact info and McKinnon Creek's contact info on them. If there's any questions, he has an example there. 48-hour, those we put out 48 hours before any area is smoke tested.
Okay. Status of final plans bid date for Magnolia Park?
A lot of issues have apparently changed for the city and therefore for us since the start of the project. It does look like some of the costs that they're incurring are running up greater than they had anticipated. It looks like the sharing of costs are not quite as clear as had been imagined at the beginning of the project. It looks like they're gonna have to, we've asked for a cost-sharing criteria from the city. We'll wait and see how that goes, and again, as a result of the higher than expected budget, it looks like they're gonna, there is a good possibility they'll be phasing this in, so they're may only do a portion of the project now, which will ultimately affect what we do. So, with all those things in mind, we're kind of at a standstill while they finalize their drainage design and figure out what their anticipated cost is, whether they're going to break it up, and we're waiting on as I said, the cost sharing they propose.
I thought they were just repaving the streets. I didn't know they were doing storm drainage replacement.
They're doing some storm drain work in there as well, yes, sir.
So the plans aren't finished on that yet?
I was mistaken, I thought they were at the 90% point with the plans on the storm drain work. Apparently, when they reviewed the 90%, they gave them some additional things to look at again, so they're not, the storm drainage plans are not finished yet.
Okay. Do we have work in here that we need to do anyway?
Yes, sir.
That line is pretty bad. The description that's given me that it's almost more clamps than pipe.
Well, I want to see the number of leaks we've had in there. If that's true, but we need to see that before we start spending $1 million in there. And we should have on our asset thing, we should show how many leaks we've had out there.
That's correct.
If that's the case, I mean, there is a possibility, like we're talking about, we could go ahead with the project, with our project. Now, we might have to repave a few streets, just the road cuts,
Just do it?
and just get it out of the way. But let's look at it, because that's $1 million I want to make sure we got to spend.
Yes, sir.
And the doggone estimate we just got was $2 million.
Yes, sir.
But hopefully it's going to be less than $1 million. So can you, can y'all get us a list of all the leaks we've had out there and everything, so we can see what that,
I can get you a list of all the recorded leaks we've had in the area. I mean,
and can you show them on a map of the system?
sure, we can get those in there, and, you know, I will say that record keeping has drastically improved in the last 5 years, but, you know, when they first started recording these things, they didn't necessarily record unless it was a major leak, so.
Well, the other thing that I'll say is, because the digital asset management hadn't really functioned perfectly and hadn't been followed so closely, when we had to look for the boil water alerts defects that we fixed, they had to go through the boxes.
Yeah, they went
So we
through,
may
they
have
went
some
through the
work to
boxes
do.
on 7 years worth of leak data.
But that's something we can do.
Now, the funds from that, those are funds that are in our, R&R
That's correct.
funds, right?
That's correct.
Now, L Street, is that R&R funds too?
Yes, sir. Those are both city-funded SPLOST projects, but our portion is R&R.
Okay. Because the sign they got up on L Street says splash funds. You don't say, anything- you don't
That's
say,
what they're- That's what they're doing.
it don't say anything about the JWSC funds. Should we put up a JWSC sign too?
Well, we ought to have a sign that says ratepayers' dollars repairing the system.
We'll go cover up our part of the sign itself, there's any complaints, they call the city.
So will the city give us a schedule on when they think they're gonna be ready to move ahead?
I'll make a request. I think that's kind of been in the works all along, but if they're still kind of general, they're apparently very close on the design, is what his term was, near finalizing the stormwater design. But we'll ask.
And this is splash funds they're using. Is it splash funds or local funds?
SPLOST funds they're using.
Yeah, that's SPLOST. There's a SPLOST.
Yeah.
Are they using the same engineer, procure, construct contractor in Magnolia Park as they're doing on L Street?
Same engineer.
Same engineer?
They haven't taken bids for the contracting work yet, they use same engineer.
The concern might be they only got one bid on
That's what.
L Street too.
We don't have much engineering in Magnolia Park to what we're doing, right?
Not,
It's finished.
it's finished.
Just that?
Ours is done. Unless they decide to change anything in storm drains, we have to go over. So-
Well, you know, the city did some work, and we went through and paid for them, if I recall correctly. Because we had to do work there too. Maybe we ought to just tear up the roads and tell people the city's coming right behind us to fix it.
They're not far off.
Well, if nothing else, we could put in the lines other than outside, other than the roads, and then put the roads, connect the roads up when they do their work too. Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about? Okay, meeting's adjourned.